This is Valerie Wendt, Vice President of Product Development and Customer Experience here at Surgent CPA Review. Thank you for joining our webinar this afternoon on how to pass the CPA exam in 6 months. We know many of you are struggling to pass the CPA exam, especially now with it getting ready to change to its new format starting real shortly here. And so we find that this might be very useful information for you. Liz Kohler, founder of Sergent CPA Review, is here with us today and is going to share with you some tips on how to create a plan to get through the exam in 6 months. Throughout the webinar this afternoon, if you have any questions whatsoever, please submit your questions in the question box. We will take some time at the end of the webinar to go through those questions, and Liz will attempt to answer those for you. We're also recording this event, so we'll be able to have that available to you after the event if you so desire. So I'm going to turn it over to Liz, and she will introduce herself and show you how to pass the exam in 6 months. Liz?
Thank you, Valerie. Hello, everybody. I am glad to hear that you are interested in embarking on this process to pass the CPA exam. I have been preparing candidates for the CPA exam for over 25 years. It's been a long time since I sat, but I feel your pain. I can remember the process quite vividly. And when I took the exam, I actually took it when I was a senior in college. The state that I'm from, we were able to take it in our senior year if we were graduating within 60 or 90 days or something like that. So I did it while I was still in school, and that really helped me get through this process. I did it in actually 5 months. So I'm speaking from experience today when I can tell you you can pass the exam in 6 months. You can absolutely do it. So hopefully today I can give you some ideas on how to create a study plan, how to pass this test, and move forward with a great career. So I'd like to begin with just some general items in first developing a personalized study plan for you. First of all, when is the best time to take the CPA exam? The general rule of thumb is that you should take it as close to college graduation as possible. So if we have anybody on the line who's still in college, you know, this is perfect time for you to be researching the exam, to be coming up with a study plan, and you know, hopefully today we can get you started and embarked on this process. If you're already in the throes of studying for the CPA exam, you know, I can still help you. I can still give you advice. You know, why is it important to take the exam as close to college graduation as possible? Because the CPA exam tests the information that you learn when you're in school. It tests accounting, it tests tax, audit, law, and you know, quite frankly, the longer you're removed from college and the longer you're out of that study mode and being a student, the harder it is, I think, for you to pick up the books and start studying again. You know, once you begin work, your life becomes a little bit more complicated. You're putting in 10-hour days possibly. The last thing you want to do is come home from work and start studying for the CPA exam. And the longer you wait, the more likely you are to forget the material that you learned. Also keep in mind that the AICPA and the FASB, they're very busy. They keep issuing new pronouncements. So the further removed you are from school, the chances are that what you learned in school will change. The information will change quite a bit. So you don't want to put off this exam. Now, Valerie mentioned that the exam is changing, and I'm sure you've heard about that on April 1st. Oh, and we'll talk a little bit about that today as well. But I want to tell you this. I don't think anybody should postpone or defer taking the exam because it's changing. You know, it is going to be changing on April 1st going forward as far into the future as we can possibly see. So there's really no reason to delay the exam. The sooner you pass this test, the sooner you'll get a raise, maybe get a bonus, and you know, you could put the books behind you and not be a student anymore. So one of the first things I want to review with you today is the order that you should take the CPA exam in. Sequence is really important, and the order that I 100% recommend is the order you see here. I strongly encourage candidates to start with the financial accounting and reporting section. This is considered by most to be the hardest part. And the reason that it's hard is because it contains the most material. It's all of financial accounting. So, simple stuff like cash, accounts receivable, statement of cash flows, balance sheet, and then tougher topics like leases and pensions and consolidations. There's also not-for-profit accounting and governmental accounting. Most students say that it's just so much material, it's hard to learn it all for one test. It's also the foundation of your knowledge as an accountant. And the AICPA has told us that going forward, starting April 2017, they plan to integrate content across the 4 sections, with FAR being the part that they plan to test most on the other sections. And to me, that is a clear indicator that you have to be strong in the financial accounting reporting section to make it easier for you to pass the remaining 3 sections. Also, it's strategy. When you start studying for the CPA exam, you may have some motivation, you may be somewhat enthusiastic. I know I was. I thought, yeah, yay, I'm going to be a CPA, and I was really excited to get started, but at the end of 5 months, I was pretty sick of the whole process. I wanted to be done. I wanted to move on. I wanted to get my license and put the books behind me. So starting with the hardest and ending with BEC, which many people will say is the easiest, although we could debate that, it's good strategy, because at the end of the process, you will be tired of studying. You'll want to get your life back, and I'd rather you be facing the easier part at the end as opposed to the harder part. So start with FAR. I do recommend audit next. And the reason I do is because in an audit, we actually say in the report that the financial statements were prepared in conformity with GAAP or another framework. So what we're seeing on the audit section of the exam are questions that relate to accounting. So they may ask you to prepare work papers involving journal entries or, bond amortization schedules or things like that in audit. And so if you haven't studied the financial accounting reporting section, you're setting yourself up for possible failure in audit. And so I recommend doing audit as soon as possible after you've prepared for FAR. Now you'll notice there's a big difference in the study time in these 2 parts. FAR, I'm recommending, if you're using the Surgent program, 105 hours of studying as opposed to audit, which is only 85 hours. Think about, your college education. How many semesters of accounting did you have to get your accounting degree? I don't know, 6 or 7? How many semesters of auditing did you have? Probably 1, maybe 2 if you were lucky. So right there, you can tell that the body of knowledge is much more narrow in audit than it is in the financial section. Now in auditing, you're expected to know all the steps of an audit. They also test reviews, compilations, and other types of attestation engagements. They also test professional ethics. So it is a broad body of knowledge, but as I mentioned, it's not as broad as FAR. After that, I recommend you go for the regulation section. The regulation section is predominantly taxation. More than 60% of your content will be tested on the taxation of property, individuals, and entities. A small section is on law and also ethics as it relates to tax professionals. Now, because there are so many rules in the tax code, I am recommending slightly more time in regulation than audit, about approximately 90 hours. If you have had a recent tax class or you're working in the tax area, that number might be substantially less. And so is true with audit. 85 hours, we've seen students in our course study in less than 50 hours, especially if they have a little bit of experience in the area. The last section, BEC, that I have here, that's the part that contains an assortment of subject matter outside of the financial accounting area. So it includes corporate governance, economics, IT, finance, and cost accounting, just to name a few topics. It is, I would say they don't go into great detail in these topics, with the exception of maybe cost accounting. You got to know a lot of ratios. You have to know a lot of terms for IT. But most students do report that this is an easier section. Now, with the 2017 exam, starting April 1, the BEC section will, for the first time, have simulations. And so a lot of people were concerned about that change. And, I don't actually think that's necessarily a bad thing, because if they're asking you a simulation, you have the opportunity to get partial credit. Whereas in a multiple choice question, you don't have the opportunity to get partial credit. You're either right or wrong. So we'll talk a little bit more about the format as I get through our webinar today. Now, here is the calendar of when you can actually sit for the CPA exam, and it's broken out in quarters. Normally what we see is the third month of every quarter, you are not eligible to sit for the exam. Now, the good news is the AI CPA is going to open up the closed quarters by adding 10 additional days to the testing window, beginning in September of 2017. So they did open up the windows before April 1st, and they're going to reopen up the closed windows beginning in September. But for June, so let's go back to the calendar, but for June, the window is going to close on May 31st. So they're not going to open up June 10 days as they did in prior months. So in looking at this calendar, we're about, near the end of March, and we're about to open up the April testing window. If you're on this call, you either are studying right now or you're thinking about studying. So I want to take you through a study plan that gets you started right away. There's no reason to delay taking the CPA exam and getting your preparation started. Some basic points that I want to make. If you want to pass the exam in 6 months, you need to be ready to study a minimum of 15 to 20 hours per week. And, I think that schedule is manageable if you're smart about how you use your study time. I don't know your personal background, but I'm going to throw out a question. How many hours can you study a day? If you're working full-time, obviously that number is going to be much less during the week. But even if you're working full-time during the week, do you think you might be able to, group together 2 hours of studying? How can you possibly find 2 hours during the work week per day? Well, get up a little earlier and do some multiple choice questions. Brown bag your lunch and do questions or watch a video during your lunch break. At the end of the day, maybe 8 o'clock at night, you set aside an hour or two to study. Any study time in my book is good study time, so even if it's just a 15-minute session and you can knock out 10 multiple choice questions, take it. And so if you're able to pull 2 study hours per day during the week, that means on the weekend you are going to be putting a little more time in. I also, don't know how you feel about studying every day. I think it's healthy to take a day off, and so if you feel like you need a day off, take it. But then you're going to have to adjust your study time during the other days, adding a few minutes here and there, maybe to every day if you think you need to take a full day off. I am of the mindset that this should not be all-consuming. Even if you plan to take the CPA exam in 6 months, you can still manage to have some fun, and you should. You need to have a balance in your life or else you're going to burn yourself out. So planning a study day off is not a bad idea. Now, generally what I recommend, if we're talking about, 105 hours you're for FAR or 85 hours for audit, plan on, between 5 and 6 weeks of study time per part. And if we were to do that, here's what I recommend. For the first 3 weeks, I would like you to complete 50 to 60 multiple choice questions per day. Now in our software, we have an initial phase, we call it the assessment phase. And what we do is we have students do multiple choice questions up front, and the software assesses you and figures out what you know, more importantly, what you don't know. So if you were using our program, that's what I'd be wanting you to do in the first week, if possible, and then we would figure out a study plan for you. But no matter how you're prepping, getting into the habit of setting aside time to initially get through 50 to 60 multiple choice questions is a really good plan. Now, in the first 2 weeks, after you get through the first 2 weeks, I want you to start to add simulations to your study plan. And at that point, you should be doing at least 4 simulations per day. Now, hopefully you have access to a study bank where you can do that many simulation questions. I think we have about 400 now in our software. So it's something that we want you to start practicing after you've had some time with the material, that you've had some an opportunity to study, watch some lectures, maybe read some content, so that you have a foundation and we know what you need to focus on. And then we recommend that in the final stretch, and that would be 1 week before your exam, hopefully you've had the opportunity to do all the multiple choice questions in your software and get through all the simulations. What I would like you to be at the point of doing is looking at the questions where you scored poorly, and in my mind, you guys know what's passing on the CPA exam, 75. So if you didn't get a 75, that's not good enough. You have to be scoring at least a 75. If you scored poorly on any of the sims, I want you to redo them to try to build up your score. And then we recommend that in that final stretch, you also completing practice exams. Now, our software allows you to take as many practice exams as you want. And so what that is it's a full 4-hour exam, and you really have to do at least one while you're studying, because you want to put yourself through that experience before you actually take your test. Sitting at a computer for 4 hours and concentrating is physically and mentally draining, and so you want to have practice that to test your stamina, make sure you can get through it. We'll talk about some changes they're making beginning April 1st that will help you get through the exam, and hopefully battle that fatigue factor. So what I want to do now is show you an exact study plan by month, to get you through this exam in 6 months. Now this, if you look at this structure here, notice I don't have a day off. And I recommended that you take a day off. So if I were to, let's say, take off Friday, and that's not a bad day to take off, right? Go out and have some fun with your friends and your family. If I give up that Friday 2-hour mark, I've got to make up those 2 hours throughout the week. Now that may be adding a half an hour to each of the days, or adding an hour each to Saturday and Sunday. That's possible. So we're looking here for far than 18-hour schedule per week. You'll notice that I'm starting on April 1st. So I'm getting started right away. If you are not in that boat and you want to postpone it, just push this calendar forward to the month where you want to start. And you can apply this to any study schedule that you may want to follow. So I'm going to start in April, and my plan is to work through the studying through May 10th. And that's when I'm going to test. And then you'll notice what I recommend is that you take at least a week and a half off before you begin studying for the next section. Now, if you're able to study more than this, you could take the exam sooner. If this schedule is too intense for you, you could postpone your test date a little bit and push everything back a few days. I hesitate for recommending pushing exam dates back, but as you plan out your study plan here, I want you to plan out all 4 sections. I don't want you to just plan out the first part. I want you to plan out all 4 over that 6-month time span, so that you're able to see what you need to do and that you're able to commit to it. So if we are able to test FAR by May 10th, I take a week and a half off. I'm going to pick up audit starting May 21st. Now, June is a blackout month, so we can't test in June, so it's a great month to study. And so what you can see here, it's a little bit less per week. I'm not studying 4 hours on Saturday and Sunday. I'm only studying 2.5 hours on Saturday and Sunday. Again, if you want to take a day off, please do so. Just make sure you make up the hours. I'm going to then test for audit right away in July. That gives me the opportunity to enjoy the holiday and take actually 2 weeks off, which would be a great break for anybody who's just gone through FAR and audit, I'm sure. And then you'll move on to the regulation section. Now, regulation has a little bit more to it in terms of study time, but not that much more than audit. So we're picking up regulation in mid-July, working through all of July, the remainder of July, and the beginning of August. We're going to sit at the end of August for regulation. Now keep in mind, by then, the examiners will open up September 10 days. So if you need to change that date at all, you need to push it back or push it forward, you can. you have that extra time built in the calendar to test through September 10th. Now, since September is a blackout month, it's a great month to study, and that's when we're going to pick up BEC. BEC, less hours overall, so I'm going to study the remainder of September into the beginning of October and sit for BEC by mid-October. This gets me through all 4 sections by mid-fall, so before any, fall busy schedule starts to kick in. Even more important, you are done before the holiday season and you can really enjoy yourself and hopefully have put this whole study process behind you. Again, if you are a college student, you could start studying as early as April. The only thing that may hold you back, as if you're still a college student, is that you may not be eligible to be approved to apply to take the exam until you graduate. So most jurisdictions require that you have a degree, a baccalaureate, a minimum of a baccalaureate degree in hand to be eligible to sit for the exam. So you really want to think about when is the best time to apply. If you want to take the exam in May and you have not applied yet, I would strongly encourage that you apply right now. It takes usually about 2 weeks to process the application. We saw the application process take upwards of 4 weeks to 6 weeks when leading up to this exam change, so hopefully things will go back to normal. If you plan to take the exam after you graduate in May, and your first part would be in July, I recommend that you consider applying for the exam mid to late May. You'll get your documentation in June, which is the blackout month, and your first testing window will be open up in July. Now, to apply for the exam, it's very easy. NASBA does accept most applications from most jurisdictions, and you can go to their website. And if your state or your jurisdiction requires that you apply to the state board instead of applying through NASBA, you can link to the state board from this website. So NASBA has, it's a one-stop shop for all the information you need on the application process and the fees that you need to pay and what documentation is required in order to apply to take the exam. Now what I'd like to do is talk to you about the exam format as we go forward. Starting on April 1, the exam is going to switch from a 4-testlet exam to a 5-testlet exam. All 4 sections are going to be 4 hours. The number of multiple choice testlets is changing from 3 down to 2, and with the exception of regulation, all the other sections have fewer multiple choice questions. So FAR, audit, and BEC, we see less multiple choice questions than asked in the old format, and regulation actually is seeing a few more. Now the other change that we see is in the number of simulations they're going to ask, and this has been quite the buzz all through the industry. I know you probably have heard that the exam is going to get harder, there are going to be a lot more simulations. Well, it works out in FAR, audit, and reg, they're only adding 1 simulation. So it's really not that bad. BEC, they're adding 4, and there were previously none. And BEC also retains the 3 written communication questions. So what is the major change? You're now seeing that the simulations are broken out across 3 testlets. In the old format, when you got to your 4th testlet, there would have been 6 or 7 simulations, and you could have seen all of them. Now with this new format, they're breaking the testlets out, and they're breaking the sims out, so you will only see the sims in the testlet that you're working. So the other good news that I think for you is that they are instituting a standard 15-minute break midway through the exam. In the past, if you took a break, it went against your clock. So now they're giving you a 15-minute break that won't go against your clock. You are also allowed to take breaks in between the testlets, but those will count against your time. So I want you to think of that 15-minute break as the 2-hour mark. if you are getting to your break, you should be approximately 2 hours through the exam. It's a great time check for you. Now, the sims, they're also telling us that they're going to add one sim that will be a more comprehensive sim. Initially, when they came out with the literature about the changes to the exam, they called it an enhanced task-based simulation. So the way I can describe it for you, if you can recall back to your accounting college days, when you had homework in your intermediate accounting book, your college professor probably assigned exercises and then some problems. The problems always took longer than the exercises. Well, that's exactly what we're seeing with these enhanced task-based simulations. These longer sims are just going to take more time to solve. They're going to be more involved, more intricate, and they may contain content that pertains to the other sections on the exam. The remaining sims, the other sims that are going to be tested, they're not changing from the old format. So, I often hear from students that they like multiple choice questions over simulations because, in multiple choice, it's four answers, and you can, guess if you don't know the answer. Well, in the simulations, you can guess too, and in the simulations, you can get partial credit. So, I know there's been a lot of talk in the market that the test is going to get harder, but I don't necessarily feel that strongly about that. I think that the examiners are trying to test skills that you, as a newly licensed CPA, are going to be asked to perform on the job. And instead of being asked to memorize and regurgitate a lot of theory, the examiners want to test your application of the knowledge. So less on memorization, more on application and analysis. That's where they're taking this exam. And so if you're able to perform on the job, you may find this exam might actually be more suited to what you're doing every day. Now, in terms of the weights, you saw that the number of questions were changing. The weights are also changing. In FAR Audit and Reg, the points are going to be evenly split, 50-50 on multiple choice questions and task-based simulations. And in BEC, the multiple choice questions are only going to be worth 50%. They were previously worth 85%. So they're only going to be worth 50%. The task-based simulations are going to be worth 35%. And the written communication questions are going to remain at 15%. I just want to make a note about the written communication questions on BEC. The topics that they can ask on those written communication questions can come from any one of the 4 sections of the CPA exam. So that is another reason why I recommend you take BEC at the end. If a topic is going to be asked that relates to FAR or tax or audit on the BEC section and you've already studied, you're going to be able to handle that question with ease. And so that's another reason why. Now also keep in mind that the examiners put pretest questions on every exam. Those pretest questions account for about 15 to 20% of the overall questions asked on all sections of the exam. And of course, those pretest questions don't count. You won't know which ones are pretest questions and which ones do count. So if you come across a question on the CPA exam and you have no idea how to answer it, we do recommend that you guess, and guess quickly and move on. Time is going to be tight, even though you do have 4 hours. You have, on average, about a minute and a half for a multiple choice question. And depending on the sim, 10, 15, 20, half an hour to answer the sim. So your time strategy is important to your passing. And so if you're not sure how to answer a question, guess, move on, don't dwell. And keep in mind that don't panic because that question may have not counted. So one of the things we've heard on the written communication questions, there will be 3 of them. One of them is a pretest question. It won't count. Of course, you can't treat it like that. You have to imagine that all 3 are going to count, but keep that in the back of your mind as you progress through the actual exam. Now, because the exam is changing, the AI CPA has released a score release timeline that is quite different from the previous timeline, and this is going to exist for the remainder of 2017. If you take the exam between April 1st and May 31st, you will not get your scores back until August 16th to the 18th. Now that is quite a substantial delay than what we were seeing in the past, of just 3 weeks. Why are they doing that? The AICPA has shared with us that they want to get all the exams back. They want to grade all of the exams and keep the passing percentage consistent from what it's been in prior years. So what that means, they anticipate that the scores will, the rough scores will probably drop. We usually see that when there's a major exam change. But they want to make sure that the same percentage of people pass, so that means we'll likely see a curve in these initial testing windows. Now, normally they don't ever curve, so there's probably not a better time than now to sit for the CPA exam if you want to start right away on April 1st. It's rare that you get the opportunity to see a curve. If you test in the July to September 10th testing window, your scores will be released on September 22nd. If you score in the fourth testing window in 2017, October 2nd to December 10th, you can expect to see your scores on December 22nd. Now, this information is troubling for candidates who have conditional credit. So if you are taking your last part and you've pushed it to that 18 months and your credit will expire if you don't pass this part, you should contact your State Board of Accountancy to determine what their policy is on extending that conditional credit, because there has been talk about doing that for candidates, and you want to make sure that your jurisdiction is honoring that policy. So hopefully that when you do finally get your score back, even though it's a delayed score, and you find out you passed, it won't affect the first part that you did pass. You'll be able to retain all of your conditional credit. Now, I'd also like to talk to you a little bit about how we've designed Surgent to help candidates pass the CPA exam faster. We rolled out a new technology this year with pretty much one goal in mind. We knew that candidates were feeling overwhelmed by the amount of content that they needed to study to pass the CPA exam. When I passed a couple of decades ago, the body of knowledge was not that big, and the knowledge that you're asked to consume over the 4 parts of the exam is just mind-boggling. And so one of the other things I realized too was that candidates all come to this process with a strong foundation of knowledge, yet most of the CPA review programs are asking candidates to start from the beginning and study everything over again. And I felt that was fundamentally not a good strategy. Why study everything? You should really only be studying what you don't know. But unfortunately, this is true. If you don't know something, you don't even know that you have to study it. So what we decided to do was build a very powerful adaptive technology where we originally start out by asking you to complete questions, multiple choice questions, and we assess your level of knowledge. And what we try to do in that assessment phase is identify what you know. Great, you know a lot. More importantly, we want to identify what you don't know. And based on that assessment, we create a personalized study plan for you. So each one of you on the line will probably have a different study plan. No 2 students are the same. Your strengths and weaknesses are different. So why should I ask students to all study the same material? This just doesn't work. And the end result, is phenomenal news. Our students are able to study and pass the CPA exam in significantly less time than the study time that's required using a traditional, what we call linear type CPA review program, where you start with chapter 1, you read all the material, you watch all the lectures, you do all the questions and move to chapter 2. You know, one of the things I found in that design is that the initial chapters were really easy and the ending chapters were really hard. And, you know, you focus on the easy chapters, you spend so much time on the easy material, by the time you get to the end of it, you're exhausted and you can't remember what you studied from the beginning. It's just a terrible cycle to get in. And, you know, it's not working for a lot of candidates. So what we are really able to do is shave hundreds of hours of study time off of your typical study plan by getting you to focus on what it is exactly you don't know. And the other thing we do is we provide analysis of your performance so that you'll know when you're ready to study and take the exam. You'll see in your results on your dashboard whether you've conquered that particular area. So the guesswork is taken out. You know, a lot of students told me that, you know, they were studying so many hours, they have to be ready to take the exam, but they really didn't know if they were ready. And, you know, one of the things I want to tell you all, it's not how many hours you put in. It's, you know, how efficient and effective your study actually is. You know, quantity is not quality. We really want you to focus in on where you're weak and make those strengths and increase the chance that you'll pass the CPA exam in less time. So we've built a really powerful adaptive technology that is going to hyper-personalize your study plan. Our software is very comprehensive. We've got close to 7,000, I think, multiple choice questions now and 400 simulations, including those longer, what they refer to as enhanced task-based sims and document review sims. The other thing I felt, you know, the videos to maximize your study efficiency need to be short, need to be on point. So I follow the approach of using nano videos, short, effective, you know, topic specific. Well, quite honestly, our students don't need to watch all the videos, because if they test out of a topic, they don't need to look at the videos. They only need to watch videos on the topics where they're struggling. And that also saves you a lot of study time. The other unique thing about the program is that our dashboard will provide a search cards which tell you exactly what you should study that day. And so our technology continuously adapts to your performance. Every day you come in, you're going to see a new study plan, and that goal of that study, those search cards, is to make sure that we are maximizing your study efficiency. So now I'd like to open up the floor to questions from you all. Val, how are we doing?
We've got a few. For those of you that haven't submitted any yet, there's still time, so please feel free to submit your questions. So a question came in while you were working through the study planner on how to lay out your studies. And the question came in, said, after looking at the plan for studying, how do you coordinate a new schedule if you failed? For example, let's say you failed your second test. Do you allow more time to study and retake that exam, or do you continue with the normal routine and retake it after you've finished all the exams at least once?
You know, I'm going to give you two scenarios, okay? I think that if you took a part and you were really, really close, you know, let's say you scored between a 70 and a 74, it might make sense for you to, you know, if you use our software, we could absolutely analyze you very quickly and figure out what it is that you did not know and just have you study that little bit to get you over the 75 mark. If you're really close, it may make more sense to jump back in right away so you don't lose that material. Now, if you scored a 50, you know, that would tell me you have a lot still to learn, and that, you know, it may be the part that you put back on the shelf and continue on with your study plan as you had plotted out, and come back to that part when you get through the other section. So it's something that, you know, we really want to customize based on how you scored on the section that you didn't pass.
Okay. With the upcoming changes to the exam, have CPA review courses been adjusted to better prepare test takers? It seems that some methods of preparation haven't changed to reflect the changes.
You know, that's a very astute observation. I have, I've looked at what other review providers are doing, and I don't see any changes. What I see is that they keep adding more content in, because of course the AI, CPA, and the FASB are passing more rules, but they're not changing how they instruct students and the recommended study path, which was why I was so motivated to create this technology. I wanted to come up with a more effective and efficient way of studying, and it's based on over 2 decades of listening to students and understanding the pain of what you're going through. It just makes no sense to me to have to study things that you already know. I think it's an actually waste of your time. You need to know what it is that you don't know, and that is what you need to study. Yes, when you work through our program, you're definitely going to be getting, seeing questions that you know, and we're not going to let you forget that material, but your focus should be on your flaws. And we're going to figure that out very quickly through our assessment phase, and we're going to point you in the direction that you need to go, what videos you need to watch, what paragraphs you need to read. I'm going to say something revolutionary. I think reading textbooks is a really bad idea in studying for the CPA exam. And I say that because I was a student, and I know that I'd be reading an accounting chapter, and I'd get through a page or two, and I would realize that I hadn't comprehended a single word because the stuff was so bad and so dry. I was thinking about so many other things, but what I was actually reading. And so what we do is we integrate the text content into the course, so that when you're working on a multiple choice question or you're working on a simulation, we'll link you out to the paragraph that discusses that topic. That's what you need to read. You need to read the pieces of the material that you don't know. You don't need to read cover to cover. I think that's a really ineffective use of your time. So to answer your question again, is I honestly don't think the other review courses have changed at all. We're really trying to revolutionize how students study for this test to give you a reasonable strategy in passing.
Okay. With the exam changing in April, do you know if there's going to be the same number of pre-test questions for multiple choice and sims? Is there a change there?
They haven't told us that they're changing the percentage. So, they've always said in the past it's 15 to 20%, and they continue to do that. And it's important that they do that because they need to know how students are scoring on the questions. If everybody gets the question wrong, it means there's got to be something wrong with the question. If everybody gets the question right, then maybe it's an easier question, then they shouldn't give as many points if you get it right. So pre-testing is a really important thing, and they do it regularly. In fact, if you took the exam before it changed recently, I bet you might have gotten a very long problem. You might have been pulling your hair out thinking, what's going on? Why is this question so hard? I bet it was, they were pre-testing the enhanced task-based sim. So, it is going to continue.
Okay. Next question is, you mentioned a curve in the first quarter, is it April, May window. Why is there going to be a need for a curve during that window?
Well, it's not a certainty. It really depends on how the country does. So, in the past, the AICPA has made significant changes to the exam over its history. And when they make a major change like they are this year, what they have found is that candidates usually score poorly, not poorly, but don't score as high as they will when the exam is out. So there's no history. People are nervous. The new questions might be tougher, so they're basing it on the history here. They think the scores will decline. But what they want to do is make sure that the national passing average stays the same. So if you've followed at all what's been published, between 45 and 50% of the people pass at any one sitting. They want to keep it that level. So if scores are going to drop, but they want to keep the same percentage of people passing, they are going to have to curve the exam. And they anticipate that at a minimum, they're going to have to curve the April, May, and they're leaving it on the table. where they may have to curb the subsequent testing windows as well. It really is dependent on how people respond to the changes.
Okay. Somebody asked, if you've been out of school for many years, how will our program help them study for people who don't remember too much of the material from their school days?
Well, you know, that we do get quite a few students who do that. And, you know, our course is designed to be personalized to you. So no matter where you are, your study plan will conform to what you need. The other thing that, you know, I feel is really important for our students is they have the ability to reach out to us. You know, Val is on the line. We have people that help our students on a personal level navigate the process. We hold weekly webinars for our students. We'll do personal phone calls. So think of us as, you know, your success coach as you navigate the CPA exam. And so if you're, you know, leery of getting started, I would tell you don't be. You know, you may have practical experience that'll help your performance, and chances are what you learned in school, the rules may have changed, and so you're going to be learning new things, but your program will conform to you. And, you know, we've seen it happen many times, and people are able to pass with our new technology.
You know, and to just tie onto what Liz says, you know, speaking to students, she's right. We do get a lot of students that are coming to us many months, sometimes years out of school, and it's the great way our software is developed. You know, with that assessment phase, it quickly determines where those really weak areas are and really drives you to that studying. But also the software does provide a wonderful flexibility that if you need to jump out and control some of your studies on your own, you know, maybe you feel like you need to watch videos and then work some questions because it's the way that you're going to refresh your memory. You can certainly do that. Our software does give you the flexibility to do that, which is also a really nice feature of our program. If somebody was starting to study April 1st, so they're just starting April 1st, what exam date should they choose to take their first section?
I would say mid-May, if you can. Absolutely. You know, figure 5 or 6 weeks out, that's when you want to take the first part.
Okay.
So mid-May is perfect.
Okay. Are there particular areas in each section that will be tested more heavily after the changes to the exam?
Well, they do give us specific weights in the general topics. You know, so if we were to look at the blueprint, you know, I could give you exact percentages. It's hard to say any one topic over another is going to be tested more heavily, with the exception of regulation. They have shared with us that they intend to emphasize taxation more than they have in previous years. So what that means is, you know, you'll see more questions on tax and less on law and ethics. But in terms of the other exam sections, you know, all of financial accounting and non-for-profit and governmental, you know, they're not changing that much. On FAR, there is some good news. They've told us they're going to emphasize the international financial reporting standards much less than they have in previous years. What they found was that newly licensed CPAs did not need to know international financial reporting standards. So they're pulling back on that on the FAR section, and in the audit section, they're dropping the international auditing standards completely from the exam. So, you know, there's some really good news for candidates where they've made some changes that are more relevant to what a CPA is actually going to be doing in the first 2 years on the job. So, you know, the course that we designed also factors in the weights of the real CPA exam, and that's something that's unique to Surgent. So when you're doing your practice exams, it's just like the CPA exam. We structure it so that if a topic is more heavily tested, you're going to see more questions on that topic and more of a focus in the course on those topics. So it's naturally designed to conform with the exam.
This person has already paid and started studying to take the auditing exam on April 17th. What part should they do next? Should they jump over to FAR and use the example you showed? Okay.
Absolutely. Good luck. That's awesome.
Yeah. Let's see. We have lots of questions from people who have been out of school a while.
Okay.
Basically, concerned about, working through the assessment phase, feeling like they're guessing at answers because they don't feel confident in the topics. Is it okay to jump out and watch some videos and work some questions?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So when you're in the assessment phase, you're seeing questions, by the way, in the assessment phase based upon the percentages that those questions will appear on the exam. Mm-hmm. And if you're coming across questions and you don't know the topic, we do in each question include a detailed explanation. We'll link out to the video if there's one that pertains to that topic. We'll link out to the text. And if you feel like, I really want to learn this topic now, then get out of the adaptive mode and take control and watch the videos and read the text. And in each video, we create a custom study guide for you. You can use those study guides. They contain all the information you need on a particular topic. We also give you access to a PDF of the slides, so you can use those for additional study tools. At any point in time, you can take control of that wheel and you can drive the course. I view each multiple choice question as a learning experience. If you're getting it wrong, then you need to learn about that topic. And if if you really want to stop the assessment and jump in, that's great. Do it. We give you the ability to do that for a reason. You want to actually be able to have some control over how you study, and and also it's an option that you have, and definitely use it.
Yeah, in fact, I was coaching a student earlier today, and I told them that during the study portion of the course, their goal isn't necessarily to see how fast that they're answering these questions in order to try to get up to that minute to minute and a half. Rather, their goal is to understand the question and understand why they missed it before they move on. So that may mean that you take some additional time as you're working those questions. For somebody, this person has an example. They've got their grad degree, but they got it 10 years ago, so it feels like their body of knowledge is very rusty. With regard to your study schedule, would you suggest that they need to up their study time or lengthen their time between sections because of the fear that they're going to unlikely be able to test out of the areas successfully?
Yeah, I mean, I'm giving an aggressive approach in this webinar. How to pass within 6 months. If it takes you 7 months or 8 months, it really doesn't matter.
You have 18.
Yeah, you have 18. Although I would never want anybody to go to the end of that 18 months, because if you don't pass the last part, you lose credit for the first part. So I'm always a fan of trying to get it done within a year. If you look at it as a year approach, you're looking at studying apart a quarter. And so if you really feel like this is too fast, then yes, push out your time frame. Give yourself the luxury of more time to study. And you don't want to feel like you're under the gun. You have all this pressure to get it done fast. If you're let's say you have a spouse or you have children, or you have a really busy job, it's going to be hard to do this schedule. It's intense, and you don't have to. So don't feel that pressure that you got to get it done in 6 months. I would say that depending on your personal life, a year is a very reasonable strategy. And if something happens and you have to use those last 6 months, then you have that as a backup. So yes, you should customize it to yourself and your life, and if you need to add more time, definitely do so.
Okay, we've got time for just a couple more questions. And for people that have submitted questions and we have not maybe gotten to your answer, I'll be reaching out to you and try to personally answer your questions for you, so just watch for an email from me over the next day or so. But here's a question. What is your suggestion regarding finding motivation when you failed multiple times?
Oh, well, I know it's very frustrating, but I will tell you that I have worked with students who have been in that situation, and all of the students that have struggled, when they started using our approach, they passed. So I would say don't give up. What is the motivation? For me, it was, I wanted to accomplish this goal. It was a challenge. I had gotten my degree. I'm not a genius, guys. I worked hard. I studied hard. I did lots of questions. I'm probably, you're probably just like me. Nothing came easy. I had to study. And that's really what the bullet is. You got to study, and you've got to study effectively and efficiently. When you do become a CPA, they can't take it away from you. You have it for life. Of course, unless you commit a felony, but we won't go there.
And do your CPE.
And do your CPE too. You've got to do your CPE to keep your license active. But it means a lot. It's a license that's worth more than $1 million in earnings potential over your lifetime. It's the satisfaction that you set out to achieve this goal and you got it. It says a lot about your character, your intelligence as an individual, your moral compass, if you will. You just put those 3 letters after your name and people know you're smart. People always say, Liz, what do you do for a living? I say, I'm an accountant. And they always say, hey, did you pass that CPA exam? I heard it was so hard. I'm like, yes, I did. Thank you. Everybody knows how hard it is, and it's a major accomplishment. So for me, it was a personal thing. I really wanted to do it. And then financially, it has meant a lot to me over my lifetime. So, I would say try and stick with it. Don't give up. And if you haven't tried Surgent, if we can help you identify what it is that you're missing. It may only be a few things that you seem to be missing. The software will extract that flaw and will make it a strength, and you'll be able to conquer the test. So just don't give up. Persevere.
Yeah, great advice. So with that, we're going to stop with the questions. As I mentioned, we will follow up with you if you have unanswered questions. We're sorry we didn't get a chance to get to them all. But we do have some information to share with you as an attendee at today's webinar. If you're a new customer with us, you've not purchased our course before, as a thank you, we want to give you a 20% discount on our review course, whether you need the full review or you just need a section. And there's a discount code there on the screen, webinar20. If you put that in your promotion code field at checkout, it'll automatically apply that discount for you. It brings the full course price down to $12.76 and the single section pricing down to $3.56. Keep in mind our course doesn't expire, so we're there with you until you pass. I also would suggest, if you have not experienced Surgent CPA Review's course yet and want to try it before you buy it, we do have an ability for you to sign up for a free trial right on our website. So just go to surgentcpareview.com, and up at the top it says try it for free. You just sign up and you'll get 3 days access to all 4 parts of the course. So you can play around with it. You can kind of see how it's laid out, and I encourage you to do that. Additionally, we conduct live webinars on our course platform throughout the week. We have one tonight yet at 7 p.m. We have them on, that's Eastern time. We have another one tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern time, and then again Thursday night at 7 p.m. You can sign up for those webinars also on our website, surgentcpareview.com. Those are good for people who are already in the course or people that are just looking to see if Surgent is the right course for them. It gives you a good view into how our course is laid out, how we recommend you using it. So we usually have a mixture of people in those webinars. They usually only last about 30 minutes. But we try and conduct them at a time where you can step away for just a little bit. And they're live, so you can ask questions. We can go back over things as much as necessary. So please take advantage of those webinars as well. So again, with that, thank you, Liz, for sharing some great insights in how to achieve a 6-month passing plan. We know you all can do it. We appreciate you guys spending the time with us this afternoon and learning how to create that study plan. Liz's contact information is there on the screen. Find us on social media as well. Make sure you're following us. We're sharing just vital information about the exam in general in many different places. And again, my name is Valerie Wendt, and I will be following up with you for those that didn't get your question answered. So again, thank you, everyone. I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you, everybody. Good luck.